Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the I Love Your Money podcast. I'm your host, Ericka, and joining me today is financial coach, and he has to correct me. I'm sure that's what his title is, financial coach Brett Roos. You guys, I met Brett at a networking meeting. I don't know, maybe a year ago or something like that. Maybe somebody introduced us. I don't remember. But I remember thinking that when I heard about his business model and what he did, I said, I need to know this man. And I probably have about 10 clients that need his services. Services, not always willing to use services. How many of you out there in the audience listening have baggage around money? And if you did not raise your hand, if you did not say me, it's because you're an absolute liar. How do I know this? Because I've been doing accounting for 23, 24 years now at this point. And I can tell you that every single one of my clients and everyone that I've worked with in my career has some kind of preconceived notions around money, what it does, what it doesn't do, what the Bible says about it, what mom and dad said about, we don't realize that there's all these inputs in our lives that shape the way that we think about money, the way that we think about wealth. And that invariably is going to affect our businesses and our relationships, whether it's personal or business, right? So I know for me personally, my husband and I, we did premarital counseling, and finance was a big part of that conversation. What are you going to spend money on? What are things that you both find valuable? How do you feel about debt? All of these things we got asked. And I can tell you that we're one of the only couples that I know that actually did any sort of pre-preparation before we got married, so that we were really clear about expectations, so that when hardships come, because they invariably will, we already had a roadmap for decision making. We had established those guardrails before something bad happened, so that in the middle of that emotional turmoil, we didn't have to try to make a decision. We already had the plan. And so you guys, that's why I had to bring on my friend, Brett Roos, author and financial coach. His book, 31 Money Questions to Ask Your Partner. Brett, thank you so much for joining me today. Okay, so what I've done, you guys, this book of Brett, 31 Money Questions to Ask Your Partner, he's got it broken up into 3 segments. And I love this, Brett. You said the 3 segments are past, feelings about the money in the past, future money, present money. What made you decide to kind of separate the questions with these, by these past, present, and future?
Awesome. First, I'm checking. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We got a little bit of a funky connection, but you're coming through clearly.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe in the video, I'll be all laggy. We'll find out.
Well, and what we'll do is we'll repost the video later, and it'll all be together, and it'll be beautiful, and it'll be great.
It's one of those things, what can happen will happen.
That is true. Yes.
Anyways, yes. Continue on.
Oh yeah. So why break the questions up into past, present, and future?
Well, because it's 3 different categories of our life that really determine a lot of our beliefs about finances, what we're dealing with today, and what we're going to be dealing with in the future. Now, when it comes to especially people talking and communicating about money, they tend to just kind of only talk about what's going on right now. The problems that are going on today, these are the problems. And then they also talk about what do we want in the future? But it's always this very vague, what's going on in the future way down the road.
Yes.
And they never really talk about where did this actually, okay, so you believe this stuff today, where did it actually come from? Which is honestly, in my opinion, more important than what somebody's thinking today is where did what you think and feel, where did that actually come from? Once we kind of know that, then I can understand more about why you're saying what you're saying and how you feel the way you feel.
Exactly. I tell people, my own personal story. We grew up without a lot of money. We weren't the poorest people in town, but we didn't have a ton, and that it affected myself and my sisters differently. In my younger years, before I was more disciplined, I was a spender. I was that person who, like, as soon as I got a dollar in my hand, I wanted to spend it. I didn't save. I didn't plan for the future. I didn't have that, kind of thought about the future. Now, my sister makes almost a 6-figure salary and still acts like she's poor, and says that she doesn't have any money. And I know for a fact she's got lots of money, and so that is going to affect how we plan and how we get in our relationships, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, what you're talking about is like this concept that I talk a lot about with different clients and with just people in general, which is we really kind of live in two different realities. At all times, we live in the reality of what's currently going on in the real world, like something you can physically see, touch, something that's happening at the very moment. Like you and I are having a conversation right now. Like that's very real.
Yes.
But then there's also the realities that we create, the stories that we've told ourselves, the stories that we've been told that we believe to be real. And now feelings are facts to all of us. Okay. But the matter of that is though, like, so for example, like we're talking right now on this, and then from my side of the computer right now, I can see that there's a lag on my video right now. Now that's the fact. That's the reality. Now, the reality I could choose to believe is that this lag in the video right now is going to cause people to not want to watch this, not want to listen to this. And then the reality from that is like, oh, I'm going to feel bad about this or whatever. That's the story. And so when it comes to like our money and our relationships, like what you're talking about, this person makes very good money, but then they always act like they're broke. It could be a couple of things. Number one, maybe they just aren't managing their money correctly. So they actually are broke. So they feel like they're broke, or they've told themselves this story for so long that they are broke that they just refuse to not believe it.
Oh, wow. That is wild. It's like you've told yourself for so long that you just end up believing it. I think that is wild. And just so you know, I think it's something like 90% of people are not actually watching the video. They're only listening to it while they're walking around, working and washing the dishes and doing the other stuff. So nobody's going to even notice, and they're not going to care. So, but to your point, that's the whole thing, right? We tell ourselves a story. It's not just about what happened. It's the story we tell ourselves about what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's learning how to become more self-aware of like, okay, what's real? What am I thinking is real, without going overboard and just gaslighting yourself all the time and just being like, I'm a crazy person. Everything that I'm thinking and doing is totally wrong. And, I'm living in a total lie my whole life. You don't want to go that far, but you want to be aware enough to be like, okay, like I think and feel in a certain way. And where did those come from? And that's why like coaching is so important, and an outside perspective on things. That's why therapists are really needed as well, is because you just have somebody who has like a non-biased outside perspective that can be like, well, here's what I see.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's like, I often, if I'm in the middle of something and I'm super emotional about it, right? I think there's a statistic that is like, you lose something like 50 intelligence points when you're upset or afraid. Mm-hmm. I mean, that makes you functionally not a functioning normally human being.
Yeah, that's a lot. It turns you from thinking of how can I respond to this situation, and it turns you into a point of how do I react to this situation.
Yep. Okay. All right. So I'm going to read a few, if it's okay. I don't want to give away your whole book, but I want to read a couple of my favorite questions, if that's okay. Okay. So right now we're going to start with the past money. Okay. Money past. So, what was a major financial challenge or setback that you have experienced in the past, and how did you handle it? And knowing what you know, what would you do differently? I first of all, I love this. So I'm thinking like if I'm dating somebody to decide if I'm going to marry them, right? Like especially if I'm dating, these are questions to like, how do you think? How do you problem solve? Like, do you learn lessons? Do you take responsibility? Like, okay, I'm totally stealing your thunder. I freaking love this question. Say a little bit more about why you think this one is so important.
Well, yeah, it really shows, it can teach you a lot about how somebody dealt with a situation in the past and whether or not they've had time or the awareness to reflect on it as well and say, you know what, maybe I did some of these things wrong. I did the best I knew at the time, but now that I know I've learned this lesson or I know this thing different, I would have done this differently. Or if they're just somebody that just puts off the blame and they just are kind of in the victim role of like, these things happened to me and it's not my fault. And nothing I could have done different. And I would not do it anything different because that's just what happened and it is what it is.
Yeah.
So it's going to teach more about somebody than just the money part.
Do you feel like, okay, so do you feel like this is almost like a before, like while you're dating? Or, I mean, once you're already with somebody, if they are like, I take no responsibility for anything I've done, where do you go from there? Like, how do you coach somebody that's like, everything is everyone else's fault?
I don't know if you can coach somebody who is in that state, but to be honest, there's not as many people in that state as a lot of other people would like to think. That's like a true state of like apathy right there, where it's like, there's nothing I can do and I give up. Most people are operating from like a level above that, whether it be some kind of like, you know, whether it's fear or it's anger or it's whatever it is. You know, that's like the lower levels of emotions right there. Not that they're bad emotions. It's just never good to be stuck in one emotion for too long.
Yeah, and those are like disempowering emotions as well.
Well, they can be empowering depending on where you're at. So if you're at a level of apathy, for example, and you are not wanting to even get up out of the bed, not wanting to do anything, and then all of a sudden you become into a state of fear of like, well, if I stay in this bed forever, then nothing's going to change. All of a sudden it's a motivator. And then a lot of times what happens is after people have gone through the level of fear, then they go into a level of, usually it's a level of some kind of like anger that causes them to get motivated to get out of that level of fear.
So it's almost like a stages of grief, but like stages of getting out of apathy.
Yeah. And yeah, so like grief would be like the level just above apathy right there, which is going from somebody who's like, there's nothing I can do. I'm just in this level of there's absolutely nothing. And then grief would be like a level of like, you know what? I would have done something, but I couldn't. And then going to the level of fear. I mean, this isn't necessarily stuff that I teach on, but it's stuff that I learned from my coach. So
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so my other question from Money Past is, have you ever had to support family members financially? This has got to be a big, hard one for people, because I know I have had to, my husband and I both have personally had to help family members. And many of our viewers, I'm sure, have family members who, maybe had addiction problems or, other things, or maybe even just, health issues or whatever. So tell me a little bit about why this one made it into the book.
Yeah, a couple of reasons. One, it shows your level of commitment to helping out somebody that is in your life permanently, which is your family member. For some people, they may view it as like, no, I haven't helped out any of my family members. They needed help, but I didn't help them at all. That person right there seems like they're, for whatever reason, you can always follow up on questions with more questions to learn more.
Well, but that's it, isn't it? It's not that these are like end all be all questions. They are starting points. What it seems like is they're starting points to kind of determine values.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The whole point behind the book was, and I'll tell you the story of actually why I wrote this and how I wrote it. is
Yeah.
that my girlfriend and I, now she had a very different upbringing from me. She grew up in old Soviet style Ukraine. And I grew up in Oregon, small town Oregon. Okay?
Not the
We
same.
had two
Not the
totally
same.
different upbringings and the way we were taught things and all this kind of stuff. Now, me being I guess I would say financial professional, if you want to call that, we've
Mm.
had our short conversations about money, but they usually don't tend to go very far. And with it being something that I see as a big challenge that was in my parents' relationship that led to a divorce,
Mm.
many friends and family members that I've seen have had issues with talking about finances that have led to breakups or divorce. You know, even in my own past relationships, disagreements about money. And then what I do professionally now, I was like, I got to figure out how we can talk about money and not have it be so weird. And so we actually got
Mm.
this book on Amazon called 101 Questions to Ask Before You Get Engaged.
Oh,
And it was a
okay.
good book. It's a lot of it's about values, and some of the stuff doesn't really necessarily pertain to us.
Mm.
But it was really awesome that we could just keep it in the car, and when we're on date nights going out to a restaurant, we just pull it out and just ask a question. And I learned a lot about how she thinks and feels because of that. And she learned a lot about me. And then I was like, well, what if there was something like this exact same thing, but it was literally all about your finances? If I could just put that together, then her and I
Mm.
could go through it together and I could learn more about the way she thinks and feels. And I could actually share the way I think and feel, and we could figure out where the common ground is. And so that's the whole reason that I wrote it at all. It wasn't something I was like,
I
I'm going to
love
put
it.
this out and people are going to love this.
But it is, but they are, and it's going to be great. I love that. I love that story. And isn't it, what is that? The necessity is the mother of all invention.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what the expression is,
That
right?
sounds
Like
about right.
you saw a need. You had your own need and you're like, I'm going to go fill my own need.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? We've learned so much about each other, about our finances. I learned that this girl had systems in place that I would have never have thought because we just never talked about it. And we were in
Yeah.
a relationship for about almost 2 years before we actually even started talking about money. Even though the topic was brought up numerous times, it just kind of didn't
Yeah.
really lead anywhere.
Yeah.
So I was like, we gotta get through this, if this is gonna work out.
Yeah. Well, and that's what, when you get married and join your finances, which is another question in here, joint or no joint, that is something that my husband and I wrestled with a lot.
Mhm.
There's so many opinions about it, you
Oh
guys.
yeah.
Okay. So now we're into money present. Okay,
Mhm.
ready? So money present. What do you prioritize spending money on? Right?
Yep.
What is there? And again, I'm pulling out all my cliches and sayings today. Wherever, follow your money and your treasure, and that's what's in your heart,
Mhm.
something like that. So I love this question, because I like my husband and I had a little extra money when we sold our house, and we were like, what do we spend the money on? And I was like, something practical, and he was like, something fun. And then we had to negotiate, and we had to figure out what we were going to do. And in the end, we decided a little bit of something fun and a little bit of something practical instead.
Exactly. It's one of those questions where it is a divisive topic for a lot of people. And it's when I'm dealing with a couple that are working with me one-on-one in coaching, this is a topic that usually comes up every single time. Is
Mm.
usually it's one person, one spouse, one partner that wants to combine the finances. The other partner does not want to combine the finances. And it's usually a fight about that. And it's always a all or nothing. And they're not
Yes.
they're not they're not to blame. Both of them are actually correct, but they're correct for their own life. But what I always teach my clients is like, let's
Mm.
figure out where the middle ground is on this. And
Mm.
usually what it is for a lot of people, and I'll just give away the secret for anybody listening, is if you are in a relationship where one person does not want to combine finances and one person wants to combine finances, that the best middle ground to start with is usually a joint account that is used for one specific thing. And that is it. No all in or all out. Because what you don't want people to do is feel like they're giving up too much of their beliefs or too much of themselves at one time. And then they are becoming resentful because of that.
Yeah. Well, and how much of the time that you see a rift like that, is it because one person is a spender and one person's a saver?
Exactly. That's usually what it is. It's usually because one person, like, they view themselves as, okay, like money's an okay issue. It's just going to come on in. It's going to go out. We're just going to, we're supposed to live this way of combining finances. We have more power if we do that together. Teamwork makes the dream work, kind of thing. Then you have the other person who has seen something, been a part of something, witnessed something where combining finances was destructive. Now they look at it as somebody like, for example, a client was worried about sharing their money because they felt like someone else would have control over what they say and what they do and what they're allowed to spend their money on. And they didn't want to ask for permission for them to go out to eat, like that kind of stuff. And they didn't want to get questioned every single time that they spent money on something. Yeah. And then the other person that really wanted to combine finances felt like, well, if you're not willing to combine finances with me, then you're hiding something, or you're unwilling to be a partner, or, anything. And like that. And it really came down to the fact that they were both right for what they were right and they were wrong.
Yeah.
But we just said, let's just,
it's like you said, they all have, I'm sorry, Brett, go ahead.
We just said, let's just do this. One account, all it is for going out on dates. That's it. That's literally all it's for. Figure out how much you each want to put into it every single paycheck. You're going to use that money. It's for date nights only. Doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if it's going out to eat or going to the movies or going to a concert or whatever. It literally is just for that. It cannot be used for anything else. But you find out that once people start to do that kind of thing, it bleeds into other areas where it's like, okay, well, maybe we can make this work.
Well, yeah, because you build small amounts of trust, right? Like you start out with something that's small and doesn't have as much weight to it, and then you learn and you practice and you can grow on that.
Exactly.
That's what it sounds like. Okay, next question. Okay, next present question. Okay, wait, hold on, you guys. I'm not gonna give away his whole book. You got to go get his book. I got it on Amazon, excellent price. You guys go get this book. I was so excited when I saw it. Even though Ben and I have been together for 10 years, we actually do a weekly staff meeting, or I actually call it a world domination strategy session. That's what we call it. Where we get together, we talk about, the week ahead. When are we going to have a date night? Like, what's the budget? How can we support each other? Whatever. And we're going to start incorporating this into those conversations because, even though we've had our combined finances and we've done whatever, we're now entering into, we're becoming more successful in our businesses. We're becoming more personally successful. So now we're moving into a new tax bracket. And you know what? Having more money doesn't necessarily mean less stress. Now it's like, now I got payroll to make. Now I got to do, whatever. And so we're going to be utilizing this for ourselves as well. Okay. But I'm going to do, one last question to close with that I think is really the most important. And this is in your money future. And that's, how do you define financial success as a couple? I love that question. I love it. Because that word success has many definitions.
Yep. It really does, and a lot of people, when they talk about financial success, even if they're in a relationship, they're committed, they're in a marriage, whatever it is, they often talk about, like, what's financial success look like for you? A lot of times it's, I want to have a lot of money, or I want to have money in the bank account, or I want to get a raise at my job, or I want to get a good career. It's either like very toward the individual, or it's very just kind of vague out there.
Yeah.
And I think learning how to define success as a couple financially is extremely important because it helps you both strive towards something together.
Yes. Yeah. Isn't that, and that's so important because ultimately, like it or not, you're stuck with one another. Like if you get married or you are in a committed relationship with someone, you can plan ahead and you can make sure that you've got a good foundation in place, or you can wait until the inevitable happens and be like,
Yep.
I guess we'll see what happens. And I think it's something like the number one reason for divorce.
Yeah. It's I want to say it's up there just behind infidelity.
Ah,
They're
okay,
both
that makes
they're
sense.
both very hard issue. I mean, obviously infidelity is it's more of a trust issue than anything that what happens. Um,
Yeah,
but a lot of times if people don't talk about finances, what happens is something called financial infidelity, where
yeah,
they're going behind their partner's back and doing something with their finances that they're afraid that their spouse won't agree with or will disapprove of in some way or whatever. And so they're always going behind somebody's back. And then that feeling of guilt and shame comes out. And then it always builds up. It's always better to just be open and honest and try to get in front of things before you're trying to fix things from behind.
yeah. And so what is it like, Brett, if someone is watching this episode and they're like, you know what? I need a financial coach. I need some help. I need a new relationship with money. What does that look like to hire you? What does an engagement with you look
Yeah,
like?
absolutely. Well, every engagement is a little bit different based on what somebody's actual challenges are that they're having. But I believe in taking the least judgmental approach to finances and to helping somebody with their finances. I tell clients all the time, like, I do not care what you spend your money on at all. Like, I'm
Mm,
not here to tell you no on a bunch of stuff, but I'm here to help you feel more confident in the decisions that you are making and that those
yeah.
decisions are working towards something that you want to go toward versus keeping you from where you want to go toward. And you might not even know what your goal is. Let's figure out what that goal is in the first place. So, what it looks like to work with me is we sit down, we really have a good conversation about what it is that's going on up in here, up in your head. What are you dealing with? What are the challenges? What's the struggle you're dealing with today? Like, what's the problem today? And, how's that keeping you from going where you want to go? And then
Mm,
my job as a coach is very similar to like a personal trainer. Like, let me look for the things that are keeping you from getting there. And then let's put together a roadmap on how to get there. And then I'm going to walk with you the entire way as fast as you want me to go with you. If you want to
mm.
walk really slow, let's walk really slow. If you want to run at a full sprint, let's do it. If you want to sprint, then take a break, let's do that too. I'm here to help the people in the way that they want to, but I will always make that promise that I will be honest with them on what I see happening and what I think would possibly work better. I'll brainstorm with them different ideas. And really, we just come up with an entire plan together.
I love it. I love it. All right, Brett, where can our viewers follow you? Do you have social links that they can follow you on? What's your website so they can go schedule a consultation with you?
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
what tell them all the things.
Yeah, the name of the company is really long, but RapidWise, RAPIDWISE, financialcoaching.com is the website. You can also find me on YouTube, RapidWise Financial Coaching, and I'm also on
Great videos.
Instagram, RapidWise Financial Coaching. I tried to make it all pretty similar.
I love it. And the videos are great. You produce great content, very helpful. You guys go check it out. We're going to make sure to put all the links in the description or in the pinned comment. And again, go to Amazon, get Brett's book, 31 Money Questions to Ask Your Partner. Roos, Roos. You guys, Roos. All right. Thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate it, Brett. And you guys hang out for just 1 minute and you'll see a commercial about my book, Audit Armor. Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ericka Reddick. I'm a fractional CFO and also known as the Fixer. So if you are a small business owner and you're trying to understand your finances, or you're an entrepreneur and you know that you need to understand some things before you get started, Audit Armor, Fortifying Your Financials is an excellent book for you. Grab your copy today, grab the freebies, click the link below, and make sure to stay tuned because we've got some great webinars and other things for you coming up soon.